Okay, we'll just go ahead and get started right now, I guess. So thank you all very much for coming. My name is Justin Santiago. I'm Airhead Center's communication specialist. I'm also the web development director over here. I have built and maintained Airhead's website as well as manage our social media accounts. And then I'm a graphic designer by nature, but I've always loved web design. And so I've built quite a few of our clients' websites as well as a few passion projects of my own. And so today we're going to go over launching your website. And there's like kind of a fair amount to go over. So we're going to go over the agenda right now. So kind of today we're going to go over the basics of building your website from scratch and kind of understanding that. So we will go over domains, hosting, website structure, including basic design, navigation, and an overview of some key design strategies. We'll also go over some basic e-commerce website differences, as well as SEO and some basic security basics. It's going to be a lot to cover, but I'll try to make sure we have some time at the end to answer any questions. Okay. So let's first start off with what is the domain? This is the first step to getting your business online, is picking a domain name. So a domain is basically just a mask for an IP address because people remember words and not numbers. But the domain name also acts as think of it as like a street address. It tells people where to go, and also as a sign on the building. It tells people what's inside, what's inside that address. Okay. So this is why when you're picking your domain, you want it to be as close as possible to your company name. So for an example of this think of like the Looney Tunes for a moment. We all know like the Wile E. Coyote cartoons with Roadrunner, and he's always buying traps from Acme Corporation to try to capture the Roadrunner. So if Acme had a website, they would probably try to go with acme.com. But if that wasn't available, they would go with Acme Corp or Acme Traps, because it's either an extension of their name, Acme Corporation, or it describes what they do or what they sell. So that would be the traps aspect. Okay. So another part of the second part of your domain is the extension. So this is the last part of your domain name, and this is like the .com, the .org, .net, etc. Now, the most common extension is the .com, which stood for commercial. And then there's like .co for companies, .net for networks, which are typically for our computers. And then .org kind of was the catch-all for like, these over time developed into more nonprofits. Currently, there are some new premium extensions out there that help people understand what your business is about. So these could be .ai, .club, .dev, .tech. Domains themselves are like real estate. Okay, so they're like a digital real estate and like digital property. So in certain cases, there are more premium locations, and so the pricing of domain can vary. Most domains run between $10 to $25 per year, depending on where you buy it from. But because of the certain high-value keywords, or in this case, they can cost a lot more than that $10 to $25. They can cost in the thousands of dollars, sometimes in the millions of dollars. So in terms of the digital property, think of those high-value keywords or high-value domains as like the beachfront real estate properties, in the coast of California, that are worth millions of dollars, versus the normal ones, like the middle of America here in New Mexico, which would be a lot cheaper. Doesn't mean they're not good. It just means they're just not as sought after. Okay. So now you might want to be wondering where do you buy your domain? Where do you buy your digital real estate? And so there are certain companies out there called registrars. Think of these as digital real estate agencies. They help you with all the paperwork you need when you buy your domain name. So the cheapest place I have found to buy a domain name is Namecheap. But GoDaddy is also very popular, and most of you have heard of GoDaddy. However, it is often very convenient to buy your domain through the same company that you have your hosting. And I'll talk about hosting in a moment. So usually when you buy your hosting, the company will actually offer you a free domain name with your purchase of the hosting for the first year. So just be aware of that, because you might be able to save a few dollars that way. So now you might be wondering, okay, why do I have to register a domain? Now, the whole point of it's like when you buy so part of buying the domain is having to register your information, which is done automatically through your purchase. Note that you have to provide an email address, and you most likely get an email asking you to confirm your domain name. You have to confirm your domain as purchased as soon as possible, otherwise it can expire, and that creates a big headache in getting your domain set up. So make sure you do check your email and confirm that domain after you register with the registrar company. When you create an account for your domain, you will need to provide some information, and this information becomes public domain. And this is a physical address, a phone number, and so it is always a good idea to use a business address or a PO box or a Google phone number, and unless you want that information to become public, and because you can get a lot of spam calls and you don't want people having your home address. Okay, so a good option to this is a lot of these registrars and companies provide what's called domain privacy, and so it costs a few dollars extra, but I find it very worth it because it helps protect your company's information or your personal information. So what this is when people go into Whois, which is a company that helps you look up this information, they will find the registrar's information. So if you go through GoDaddy to buy your domain, and people go through Whois to look up who owns that domain, they'll see GoDaddy's information and not your personal information. Okay. So the next step of getting your website built is hosting. So to understand what hosting is, you need to understand first the basics of what a website is. A website is just a series of files that live on a server, which is a special computer that is presented in a certain way. So if a domain is like buying the digital real estate, hosting is like buying a house. Okay, your files need a place to live, and that is always on and can be accessed by anyone. So unless you build your own house or server for your files to live on, you rent a place for your files to live, and this is where hosting comes in. So, and unlike actual real estate, it's often a lot better to rent than buy, unless you are a developer and can maintain your own network. So when you go to these hosting companies, you'll find a lot of different options, and they can fit different needs. The most common, and the one that most new sites should offer, what I recommend, is called shared hosting. And I recommend this because it's typically the most affordable option. Depending on the company you go through, the price can be anywhere between $5 to $25 per month. So it is called shared hosting because your files are stored on a server with other files from other sites. So if you have if the hosting itself is a house, think of it as having roommates. Okay, so by having the roommates, you are able to lower your own cost, but you might need to fight for the hot water every now and then. And in this case, that hot water is the server resources like CPU and RAM. And you might need these resources depending on the traffic all these sites get. So the more traffic these sites get, the more resources those sites need. Now, oftentimes this is not an issue for new sites because it takes time to develop that type of traffic, especially if you're starting from scratch. So the other types of hostings are VPS, or virtual private servers, or dedicated hosting. A VPS hosting is similar to shared hosting, but you're guaranteed the hot water or the resources you might need. So you're guaranteed a certain allotment of those resources. So this is also a good affordable option for sites that have a moderate to high traffic. It's more expensive than shared hosting, but it's not outrageously expensive, especially for small businesses who are worried about income at the moment. So they typically range somewhere between $30 to $120 per month, depending on the company and the plan you choose. The other option is dedicated hosting. So if the shared hosting and virtual hosting is like renting an apartment, this dedicated hosting is like renting a house. Okay, you have all utilities you need, but you have to pay all the bills yourself. So this is great for high traffic sites, but it can be very expensive, anywhere between $100 to $200 per month, depending on the company. So there are a lot of good hosting options out there, but the one I recommend to most people is Bluehost, though I have heard good things about SiteGround as well. I personally use Bluehost on my sites and I've had a good relationship with them. I recommend them because they're often the most affordable hosting out there that I can find. And they also have great customer service and the ability to help upgrade your hosting seamlessly as your site grows. So if you start off on the shared hosting, and you find you're getting your site's getting more traffic and you need to upgrade your hosting, they will do that for you and make it seamlessly without you having to rebuild your site. So I would recommend do some research on your own, see what your budget is and what you think is best for you, and do some research on customer reviews to see what other customers are saying. Most of these sites will automatically help you put WordPress on your site. WordPress is a very common way to build a website, and probably easiest for most new businesses. And we'll kind of talk about them a little later on too. So now that you have your domain and hosting figured out, you need to kind of start figuring out what goes on your website. So hopefully you've already been thinking about this, but you just you just don't go putting things together. You need to make a plan. Okay? And the best way to plan out a website is to make a sitemap, which is basically just a flowchart of all your content. This will help you figure out what pages you want, how to structure those pages, figure out navigation, and give you a starting point. In technical terms, a sitemap is something you need to have on your website that Google crawls to index your pages so people can find them when they search for things. And I'll talk about this more later on when we talk about SEO. Okay? So here's a visual example of a flowchart, of a sitemap. There's a basic flowchart and something of how your website should look. So you have your home page at the top, and then your main landing pages underneath. A landing page is the page where people can land on your site or go directly to for the information they want, bypassing your home page. So an example of this could be a products page or a storefront or a contact page. Now, these should be important pages with key information people will actively be looking for. And these pages will be included in your menu for your navigation. I'll talk about that in a second. One good idea when developing your sitemap is to kind of mimic this flowchart like this with Post-it notes. Write them out, put them on a wall or a whiteboard or a table, and that way you can move things around freely to see what you have and where they should go in an order that makes sense. However, some sitemaps can get very complicated if you have a complicated website. Now, starting off for a new website, it should never be as complicated as this. This is for more organizations who have a lot of balls in the air, juggling a lot of different organizations. Arrowhead is a good example of this. We have a lot of different programs doing a lot of different things. So if I made a visual sitemap, it would look very complicated, similar to this. So I mentioned the menu navigation. So your menu is a tool to provide quick navigation through your web page, and it is where important information or important pages you want people to easily find need to be. So those first landing pages that we talked about, those should probably be on your menu. Because if people cannot find the information they want easily, they're not going to use your site. So the menu is very important. So after your navigation, your sitemap is created, you need to create the pages themselves. Now, there is no formula to use when creating your web pages, especially since every website is different with different goals and information. However, there are some universal aspects of web design that you should keep in mind when building out your web pages. The first thing you need to think about is the user interface. This is also called front-end design. Okay, so creating the user interface means that you put all the pieces of information on the page in a way that makes sense for the user to find. So ask yourself some of these questions to see if your layout makes sense. Is your user interface friendly? Does the order of the content make sense? Is the information easy to find? Try some A/B testing with some friends or family and see if they can find the information, and if you have multiple designs, see which design works best. User experience is based off of the UI design. So this is not just a visual, but the overall experience of someone visiting your site. So this means, does your website load quickly? Does your website encourage user interaction? Is your site easy to use? Is it easy to navigate? There's some psychology that goes into play here. where you put yourself into the mind of your customer to see what they want and what will provide them the most value. Another key aspect of designing a website is responsive design. So responsive design is where the website display adjusts accordingly to the size of the device accessing the site. So whether that's a cell phone, a tablet, or a desktop. And it is one of the most important aspects of the UI and UX. If you don't have the good UI, your website will, if you have good UI, your website will be just as easy to use on a mobile device as it is on the desktop. So if you want your customers to have a good experience on your site, you will need to prepare it for them to access on the mobile too. In 2013, only 16% of web traffic came from mobile devices, but in 2019, about 52% of traffic came from cell phones. So designing for the cell phone and the mobile devices is just as important for the desktop. So having these responsive elements can be a huge deal. So like I said, 53% of mobile websites visits were abandoned if a mobile site takes longer than 3 seconds to load. For every 1 second delay in site load time, conversions fall by 12%. Like I said, 52% of all online traffic comes through smartphones. So now let's talk about layouts for a second. So just like a domain is like buying land, hosting is renting the building, your design and your layout of your web page is like designing your storefront. Okay? If your design is bad and people can't find what they're looking for, they're going to leave and probably never come back. Think about it, some of the storefronts you have seen. If you walk up to a place and it's grimy, the windows are caked in dust, the pane of glass above the door is shattered, are you going to go inside? Only if you desperately need something, and they're the only choice until you can find a better one. So but you are going to go into the store that's nicely laid out, is clean, well organized, and seems to have what you need. Websites are just like that. So the way your website is presented to others, how the different elements interact with each other, where information is placed, all this is the skeleton of your website and is very important to help your website thrive. The two biggest points, so 50% of online sales are lost when visitors can't find content. So how do you make sure they find the content? Well, you follow some basic principles and tailor your site for some basic needs. The two biggest points to remember for the website layouts are it needs to be simple to use and it needs to be intuitive. 76% of customers want a site that makes information easy to find. Also, it should be streamlined, goal-oriented, designed for skimmers, because nobody reads long paragraphs of text on a website, and responsive. So 88% of online customers are less likely to return to a site after a bad experience. 85% of them think that a company's mobile website should be as good or better than their desktop website. And 57% of users say they won't recommend a business with a poorly designed mobile site. So now that we cover some of those basics, now what do you start with? Okay, and so there are two kind of main portions of your site, the above and below the fold. So the fold is, you can think of it like as a newspaper. It's the first thing people see when they open up your website. Okay, so things above the fold are the first thing they see on their webpage, and things below the fold are what they have to scroll down to see. But remember, on the responsive websites, the fold might be different depending on the device they see. So the first thing that should be like the headline, and this is the reason they're coming to your site. The second thing is there should be something else for them to do. So turn to page 5 for the rest of the story, like on a typical newspaper. So this is like your primary call to action. So for your headline, here are some tips. If you're struggling with figuring out your headline, ask your customers why they use the product. Ask them what makes them interested in what you have, or what value are you offering? Or you can ask them, why are they going to your website? Essentially, this should be an answer to the question of why do people go to your site? Why should people interact with your content? It should be something that a visitor reads and thinks, hey, that's me, or hey, that's exactly what I need. Okay, so examples of this can be helping you take that next step for success, or it can be something very niche down, so as the softest wool for your knit projects. The subheadline follows right under the headline. It provides a little more information about your product or service. So whether it's, it could be providing free business development and growth assistance throughout New Mexico, creating high impact videos and animations for your next product launch. It provides a lot more information. So now one thing I talked about is your call to action, and that's the next thing you want your visitors to do. Remember your online storefront. Remember, if you walk into a store, there's no signage and there's no one to ask for help and no organization. What do most people do? They leave. This is the same when they go to your website and there's no call to action. You sit there, you look at the front page and wonder what is next. You can scroll up and down, but there's nothing else to do. You think, this was cool, I guess, and move on. Don't do this to your customers or prospective customers. Give them a path forward. Your call to action not only needs to give them a path forward, but needs to be something of value. So this can be the product you're selling. If your brand is already established, it can be a way for them to learn more about your company or product. It should solve their pain point or answer the questions they came to find. Whatever it is, just make sure it provides some value. So if you look at the example here I know the image might be a little hard to see, but it comes from a website called ConvertKit. So the first thing you see, this is the first thing you see, and it's above the fold. So you see their logo, and so you clearly know where you're at, and then you see a clear menu in the top right here. Next, you see their headline. Connect with your audience, make a living doing work you love. Clear tells you exactly what you want to do. Hey, that's me. Another subheadline. Email marketing software the way it should be. Tells you exactly what their product is. And then they also have an informational video here, which acts as a visual graphic to helps the user not only understand if they want to find out more information about the product, it's right there for them, but also provide a design element as a visual simulation. And they have a clear call to action right here in this button. Create a free account. Now, one of my favorite parts of this is this little line right here. And so this helps you, it actually starts the path for you to scroll down and see the rest of the content. And so it helps you engage with the rest of the page. So when designing a website, I know it can be a little cryptic if you haven't done it before. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of how all this magic works. So responsive design is based on a grid, and responsive points based on the size of a screen according to how many pixels wide it is. So an example of this is the Bootstrap grid, which is a framework, but it's a good way of helping you figure out how to lay out your information. So in Bootstrap, you have 12 columns, and and these columns are typically to span one width wide. However, they can be combined to span different types of columns. And as long as they equal 12, so here I can have 12 one-column designs, or 3, 4, 4 and 8, 6, 6, or just one column of 12. When these screens respond, they stack on top of each other depending on the breakpoint of the pixels wide, depending on the screen. They stack from top to bottom, left to right. So for this 4, on this column right here that says 4 and 8, if I was, this is like on a desktop, if I went to a mobile device, the 4 would go above the 8, and it would go in that order. So we're going to go through some just like quick little ideas and examples of something you can put for your website design. So here you definitely would have your logo and your navigation right on the top. You have your headline, your subheadline, and your primary call to action, as well as your header and background image. And this is like where the design element comes in. If nobody wants to see just a plain white page with text on there. Another thing you can have are some trust indicators. So these could be logos of current or past clients you have, or other types of trust indicators we have. So again, here's some very different examples you can use to, and we'll post this webinar and this presentation on our website, so you can kind of go through these examples to peruse at your own pace. Okay, and then so there's different ways you can arrange your information depending on the design you have. Now, all that content is above the fold. So what about below the fold? This is where you want to put information where you can have, we try to provide more context about your product or service. And you are trying, this is where you kind of make your sales pitch. So you can have some benefit list of your product or service, some key feature highlights, some more trust indicators. And these can be customer testimonials, success stories, social proofs, because social media is very important, especially with selling online nowadays. And that, or if you have awards or professional accreditations, you can show off your team. And you can arrange these in different varieties that make sense for your website and your product and your design. Now, and after the secondary information, you have additional content. Now, this content helps reinforce your company's message and offers additional resources for visitors that can improve user experience. So make sure to only include relevant content. Too much content that doesn't help your visitor will create confusion and may push people away. So this content can be blog articles, recommendations, tools, tips, events you are putting on or going to be scheduled, or coupons, free stuff, things that people will help people interact with your site. So ultimately, the purpose of your layout is to make it easy to navigate your site, interact with the content, and put the information at the fingertips of your customers. So you want to make sure your layouts keep people using your site, make them interact with multiple points of content, support calls to action that enable easy purchases, host interactive content that drives click-through rates, make it easy for people to interact with your outreach and engagement, such as blogs, videos, and then make it easier for you to post content and to keep your site up to date, because part of making your website successful is keeping new content constantly going on your website. And then the main indicator is to build trust and relationship with potential clients or customers. The last two items on this list are the most important ones. One, you want to drive traffic to your site and to your content. And we will discuss more about this in SEO, but this improves your rankings. But it also keeps people on your site. The instant you put a barrier in the way, people will bounce from your site. And if the content is too hard to get to, they won't consume it. All the work that you put into making your cool and neat designs won't matter if they can't easily access it. And so that content needs to be kept fresh and up to date. But not just the content, but the layout has to be updated too. So as styles change, you may need to reformat your site. And as the audience change, you might need to change the formats as well. So the example website, so there are some so always keep in mind that your content and your marketing needs to be tailored for your business and your audience. So one thing, now we talked about the aspects of building a website, but what about a store? And this is the actual part of the website where you sell your products or services. And this is called e-commerce. And if you have experience running a physical storefront or a business, it shouldn't be too foreign. The principles are very similar. The delivery method is the only thing that changes. So when you're running an online store, it's very similar to the physical storefront. You still need to manage your inventory. You need to keep track of shipping invoices, sales tax, if you have sales tax, depending on the state. One thing I will always recommend and advise people is if you're running both a physical storefront and a online storefront, you need to make sure you keep your inventory separate. Because if you have a one-of-a-kind item and you're selling it on both in the store and online, and somebody buys it in the store and then somebody tries to buy it online, you can't sell it to them online. So they're going to be an unhappy customer and they're going to leave you bad reviews, and that's going to impact your business. So make sure you have separate inventories. And when you're setting up your sales taxes and all this other stuff, always consult a professional to help you with those things, because I know taxes can be very confusing. And if you don't know where to start, if you're part of one of our programs, look to our Arrowhead Innovation Network to help get you started. We can meet with some of our enterprise advisors. So now I'm wondering, but how do I actually start setting up my store online? So luckily there are a few pre-built tools out there to help you do just that. Shopify and WooCommerce are the two tools that I will recommend for an online shop. So let's go ahead and go into the differences of these for a second. Shopify is a website platform that will allow you to build a website around your online store. So it focuses primarily on selling physical products. So with Shopify, you You don't need to go buy your own domain and your own hosting. Inside Shopify, they provide their own hosting, and they can offer you your own custom domain, so you don't have to buy Bluehost or SiteGround or get your domain name through Namecheap. You can do it all throughout the Shopify platform. Shopify also does offer pre-built templates for your website to help you create your layouts for your pages a little faster, especially if you're new to web design. This can be helpful. It offers built-in analytics to help track customers and how products are performing, and it also integrates with other services like print-on-demand services. The second product is WooCommerce, and so this is a WordPress plugin. So if you're building your website through Bluehost and you install WordPress and you want to start selling products, you would want to install WooCommerce. And this one, like I said, you do need your own hosting company for, but this plugin is free. There are some premium features, but you don't necessarily need those. This plugin has a lot of customization options, which does provide a little bit of a learning curve. However, when you're setting it up initially, there's a wizard that walks you through each step of the setup and makes the process very simple. So WooCommerce is a great option for those who want to expand their current site, if it's built on WordPress, or to expand an information site and start selling their products. So if you just want to get a web presence right now without selling anything initially, just to get your name out there, and you want to build out the WordPress, you can easily add on WooCommerce later when you're ready to start selling new products or services. And WooCommerce also works very well with selling physical products as well as digital products, because you can do easily downloadable stuff through WooCommerce. It also integrates with other services like PayPal, Stripe, and other print-on-demand services. So now that we have the basics of a website down, we want to make sure people can find your website. And this is where SEO, or search engine optimization, comes in. SEO is how you show up on Google results, which is very important. About 65% of search engine users will click on one of the top 5 suggestions of the results page. I mean, think about it for a second. How often have you gone to the second page of Google? You usually don't. So there are many factors that go into SEO, and it's very good, but it's very similar to good design. But first, you need to understand how Google works. The SE part is the most important part of the acronym. It's as much about how people are searching for the info as the info they're searching for. So search engines like Google crawl their website, indexing results to be ranked based on the number of links, secondary results, and other factors. And this is how Google actually works. And this is where the sitemap comes in that we talked about earlier. So you may think that you might have a lot of control of how the robot indexes your site, but there are some key concepts that can help drive your results. So 7 fundamentals of the good results are crawl accessibility, so engines can read your website. And this, like I said, the sitemap will help come in that you develop when you first planned out your website. The XML and HTTP part, the technical part, is what the Google scans. Compelling content that answers or searches questions. Keyword optimized to attract searchers and engines. Great user experience, including a fast load speed and a good design. Share-worthy content that earns links and citations, so people can share your content and lead back to your website. The title, the actual domain name, and description to help draw higher click-through ranks. And then the snippet or schema markups to stand out in search engine result pages or SERPs. So I know this graphic might be a little hard to see, but this is a really good building block of SEO. So on those 7 fundamentals, here's how important they are in SEO optimization. Obviously, you want the crawler to be able to access your site, and because if the crawler can't access your site, it doesn't matter how good your site is, you're not going to show up because Google can't find it. The other one, you kind of go through these exactly in the order we went through. The next is the compelling content. Is your content actually answering things people are looking for? Is it optimized to attract the searchers as well as search engines? Does it load fast? Are people actually staying on your site, or are they just bouncing right off? Do you have the content that people are sharing so they can more people can find your site? Now, the top one is very interesting because as a SERP, like I said, search engine results page, is what shows up at the top of Google when, of what you're searching for. So an example of this can be if you're searching to spy something, you see the Google Shop stuff. Or if you're looking for a location, you might see Google Maps at the very top. This is interesting as websites and technology develops. These things that are what most people tend to click on, but it's also things that the new devices tend to read out. So like in the IoT or Internet of Things devices, like such as like Google Home or Alexa, these SERPs are what they read back to you. So if you say, "Hey Alexa, find the nearest dry cleaners," it's going to use this SERP and to read that out to you. So that's what. So as this develops, SEO becomes more important. So building off these basic concepts, there's a right way to help your SEO and a wrong way to help your SEO. The right way is to make organic and real content. And so this is for how people will use your site. This is how crawlers interact with your site. This is called white hat. This is where you make content for people and not so much the search engines and not the algorithm. The black hat, or the wrong way of doing it, is by trying to trick the Google system and the Google algorithm. And just like people don't like being lied to, the Google algorithm doesn't like being lied to. And it will find out if you're trying to trick it, because there's a lot of information that goes into this. And so if you have hidden links on your page, or if you have white text against a white background, you put in extra keywords, or you put keywords in your metadata, all this stuff can get your site booted from the search results. It won't necessarily kick your site offline, but it'll make it so it's very hard to find your site unless people already know to go there. So your new customer traffic will diminish greatly. So I know this SEO stuff is very complicated, and it takes a lot of time to build good SEO. It's not going to happen overnight. However, there are some tools out there to help you build your SEO presence. So for WordPress sites, one of the plugins I always recommend installing is called Yoast SEO. There is a free and a premium version, but even with the free version, you get everything you need. This helps you optimize every page and every post with an easy-to-use tool that appears at the bottom of the page of the post when you're creating it. And it uses an intuitive stoplight signal. So if your SEO is bad, it gives you a red light. If it's good, it gets you a green light. So Yoast also automatically creates an XML and HTTP sitemap that I talked about earlier. It helps Google crawl your site. Yoast will create that for you and generate it for you. And it has it on your site, and it will automatically update with your site as your site grows. So if you add a new page, the sitemap will understand that, and Yoast will update that for you. So speaking of Google, a good way to get ahead in your SEO is by going into the Google tools that Google builds help you build your website. So the primarily ones of this one are the Google Search Console and, of course, Google Analytics. Google Search Console allows webmasters to check indexing status, measure traffic and performance, fix issues, and helps you with the overall results. Google Analytics is a tool that you need to integrate into your site with a little bit of code that's just copy and paste, but lets you dive into your details of your traffic. So you can see where your traffic is coming from, the age, gender, location, device, even what browser they're accessing your site from. All this will help you gain insight into your target audience and help you pivot to see if you reached a different audience than you intended. Now, the simplest way to integrate all of Google's tools into your WordPress website is by using a plugin by Google called Sitekit. It will walk you through the setting up process of each of these tools and integrate it into your site. Now, one of the last big topics we're going to talk about is security. And this is essential to keeping your site, to maintaining your site. So, security is not something you can just set and forget, but there are tools out there to help you automate certain tasks in case you do forget things. Because website security is something that needs to be taken seriously. It is, like I said, it's never set and forget, but it requires constant surveillance. If a website is hacked and blacklisted, for example, it loses up to 90% of its traffic. Data breaches can result in lawsuits, heavy fines, and a ruined reputation. So in recovering a hacked website, if it's possible, can result in a lot of negative consequences, not to mention a lot of money for someone to help you thoroughly sweep and clean up your site. And all it takes is a single line of code to infect your website. So there are a lot of different threats out there to your website that you need to protect your website from. So some of these attacks might be automated web attacks, malware injections, SQL injections, cross-site scripting, and brute force attacks. You don't necessarily need to know what all these mean, but you should actually be aware that there are a lot of threats to your website out there. You might think, I just have a small little web page, and I'm here in Las Cruces, New Mexico. No one's going to care about my site. I have built my own sites, that are very small myself, and you have people from China, Russia, from anywhere, all over the world, trying to attack my site. Because a lot of these are bots, and some of them are humans just trying to hack into a website and steal information. So no matter how small or insignificant you think your site might be, in the grand scheme of things, it might not be like Google, but that's when you need to have those extra protections in place. So even though it needs to be taken seriously, there are a few simple things you can do to make sure your site remains safe. And the first is to use the right tools. So one of the things you need to do is make sure you back up your files. Updraft Plus is a free WordPress plugin that does this for you. In case your site is ever hacked and you need to delete those infected files, you still have a copy someplace else for you, so you can re-upload your site and re-upload those files. Another thing you need to have is a basic firewall and malware protection. And you can do this with some security plugins, especially on a WordPress site. WordFence is a great all-in-one security plugin for WordPress sites that blocks against all those attacks that I referenced in the slide before. Another thing you can do is a server-side protection. So this is security and firewalls placed on the server itself to keep people from hacking into your website. Most registrars and web hosting providers provide this for you, provide you an option for this through a third-party company. Bluehost has one through SiteLock, which is a very affordable option. I believe it's only an extra like $3 a month or something like that. It's not too much expensive, and it's kind of worth getting that, especially if you're worried about the security of your site. Now, another tool you need to have when you're buying your domain is called an SSL certificate, or a secure sockets layer. So in essence, what this does is gives you this padlock and the HTTPS. This is pretty much mandatory nowadays, because if you don't have any type of SSL certificate, Google will give you this error, and your connection is not private, and try to turn you away from any website that doesn't have that SSL certificate. So you kind of need to get it nowadays. Most web hosting providers and domain registrars provide you a free SSL. There are different layers, so different security levels. So if you're taking a lot of secure and sensitive information, you probably want to upgrade your SSL. And you can talk to the hosting provider or your domain registrar to help you do that. Now, another thing you need to make is for taking payments online, that's when you need that upgraded SSL. However, if you can't quite afford that, because those can be expensive, what you can do is when you're taking payment information, especially, you can integrate third-party services into your website. I know you can do this through WooCommerce and through Shopify. And Shopify handles the payment processing for you. But if you can use a third-party processor like PayPal or Stripe, you actually have more users likely to purchase from your website, because if they don't know your website well enough, but they like your item or your product and they want to buy it, but they don't quite know your reputation, your brand well enough yet, they know PayPal, and so they may not be comfortable putting their credit card information directly into your website, but they're happy to use PayPal or Stripe to handle that information for them. So if your site ever does get hacked, there are some things you can do to recover it. So the first thing you need to do is to delete all your infected files. And so this is where the backups come in. So don't lose your data and have to rebuild your whole website from scratch because you didn't take 2 seconds to back up your files. Next thing you need to do is change all your passwords. And this includes your email and everything else that's related to your site, or especially if you reuse passwords for multiple accounts like most of us tend to do, even though it's bad practice. you need to change all that stuff to help protect your information. And especially if you store client information, whether that is credit card information or any type of sensitive information, you are required by law to notify them of the breach as soon as possible. And if you don't do that, that's where the lawsuits and everything comes in. So after your site has been thoroughly cleaned, you need to get everything back up. You need to make sure your site is up to date. So if you're using WordPress, you need to make sure you're constantly updating things so certain patches and security features are constantly in place. And that's pretty much it. So we kind of covered the basics of setting up your domain, your hosting, basic layout design, responsive design, SEO, and security. So feel free to give me some questions.
Thanks, Justin. That was a really awesome presentation. While people are coming up with questions in the meantime, I have a common question. So if people are, is there a way for Stripe or PayPal, would you be storing client credit card information, or that's completely handled by them third party?
That's a good question. No, so your website and will never store the client's information if you use PayPal or Stripe. PayPal will have your information. They already store their information. So that's why I always recommend using this, because say if I have a website and I'm selling a product, but you pay through PayPal, and if PayPal gets hacked or whatever, and then your information is breached, I'm not liable for that website, because I'm not affiliated with PayPal. I'm actually using their services. So your information, my credit card information, is never stored on my site. It's all stored on PayPal servers, which has great encryption, a whole team of security experts on that to help keep your information safe.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. I think it's good to know that there's tools out there to help limit your liability as a business, because you have a lot of stuff to worry about already.
Yes.
Thanks for providing that. It'd be cool, I think, to call on some people and just to see what kinds of web launching issues you guys have, or questions that you have about your personal website. Kristen, you've come to several of our webinars now. Can I pick on you and just see if you have any stuff?
So far, I'm just barely getting my website up and publishing it in the next week or so. So that's why I was wanting to come to this class to learn about launching it, making sure that I had everything in place for that. I'm using a website builder. So it's through GoDaddy, and it's pretty easy because it's just a template. So yeah. And I think they handle most of that. But it's good to know that I need to look into the security stuff and make sure that everything is set up just right. So
yeah, I'm familiar a little bit with the GoDaddy builder. I haven't quite used that one myself, but I think I have worked with GoDaddy's customer representatives before, and they're quite. It takes a little bit to get through, but it's not too hard if you use the chat filter, the chat feature they have. And so if you ever have some questions with that, I think you can contact them and ask them these questions about the security and all that, and they should be able to help walk you through that.
Yeah, they've been very helpful to this point. And right at this point, with everything going on, their wait time is ridiculous, but they will call you back. So it's good.
Yeah, most of these websites the wait times are going to be increased just because everybody is building the website now. So usually, like I said, with Bluehost, when I use them, I got something within immediately. Now it's going to be a wait 2 or 3 minutes, but it's still not terrible. So
yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Kristen. It looks like we have another question from Regina. She's, how many items should I start off with for one person to handle, but yet make the store look plenty and attractive?
So that is a good question. I think it honestly just depends on what type of products you're selling. So if you're selling T-shirts, for example, you probably want a few varieties just to give people some options. I think it's just kind of depends on how fast you can make the designs for them. Oh, so okay, I see beauty products. So I'm assuming like makeup, and so like makeup and lotions and stuff like that. So I think as far as types of makeup, I think that depends on just what you have. I mean, if you already have those products available and ready to ship, go ahead and put them on there. It's depending on which like the platform you're using, it's fairly easy to add new products. WooCommerce makes it very simple to add new products, and so does Shopify. So I think it's as long as I'd say a good rule of thumb is just starting out, especially if you're just starting to develop products. Have maybe 2 or 3 is a good one to start, just to show you. Oh, you have, okay, I see you have 300. So you have 300. I would go with your best sellers. Choose 10, 20, and then see how those are working. And then if something's not selling, maybe pull that off and then try one of your other products.
That's good advice, Justin. Thanks. And I would also say that if you are planning to put your beauty products and stuff online, and you're trying to see sort of simple and manageable, try to look at other websites too that are out there for new beauty products in your industry, and kind of see what they're doing. Make sure to differentiate yourself, and also to get a good sense of what might be manageable. And you can look at reviews too. If people aren't getting their orders fulfilled and things like that, then that might be an indicator that that's a lot of inventory.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice.
And then Tamara has a question in the chat. She said, if we set up a collection of email and personal information, but use PayPal or Stripe for financial information, are we still obligated to notify visitors of to the site who have entered personal information if we get hacked and their email name?
Yes. If you're collecting any type of information and you get hacked, you have to notify your visitors, because you want to do this for 2 reasons. One, you're legally obligated to let them know, because especially with now the new information out there, like the EU's cookie mandate, so you have to notify people if they're using cookies and they're opting in and stuff. You need to notify them legally. And then the second one is you need to know, like if I got hacked and or if I put my email out there and I get hacked, people can hack into my email or hack into my other accounts because it might use the same email address or something like that. So it's just good business practice to be transparent in that aspect. So you want to, and like all you get is like, hey, it's like basically saying we're doing everything we can to fix this. But your email, and personal information, whether it's house, phone number, whatever it is, was compromised. Please change this as soon as you can, so your other accounts don't get compromised as well. So the short answer is yes, you need to notify them.
And then Gwen Patrick asked, which site template models do you suggest as best for services?
So selling a service online, it depends on how you do it. As for template model, you can do this through WooCommerce. I've done this. So like and occasionally I do some freelance work. So through my website that I have that, I kind of just have them email me. Because I don't have set packages. But say if you have a set package, like a 5-hour session of yoga or something, you can have those prices listed there, and then so like it's like a conference or one-on-one session. You can have these little packages sent, and then you can use other plugins or other services to help schedule times or things like that. So I think it's kind of, there's really no template I can recommend, because it kind of depends on the service itself.
Yeah, I would echo what Justin just said about what kind of functions you might need as a service, because services are different. Different plugins that you might use with a template will work, and sometimes they won't, and it'll be all wonky if you try to integrate it. So it depends on what functions you want. And so you might talk to some kind of service provider, get a consultation. A lot of times they're free, and get some advice on your particular needs. I did paste in a link to themeforest.net. ThemeForest has tons of templates that you can integrate with, say, WordPress, which is one of the platforms that Justin talked about during his presentation. So you can browse through those, but again, I would talk to maybe a professional to see what kind of your needs, functions you might need on your site, and what templates work best with that.
Thanks for that. And one thing actually I will kind of build off of that on. So if you're not going through like a Shopify thing, most of you probably build a website through a WordPress builder or WordPress. WordPress is free to use, and like I said, Bluehost will automatically install WordPress for you. And if you have to go through a different hosting provider, you can help. Most of them actually offer WordPress for you, and they can help you set that up. When you're using WordPress, the theme that I recommend to most people, it is a premium theme, but I like it. It's very easy to use for people who aren't familiar with web design and coding. It's called Divi. It's a drag and drop builder. One free theme that I recommend for people is called Astra, and then there are some free drag and drop builders you can use with that theme. So I'll put that in the chat for you all. But that is a good combination, because Astra is a very quick, very light framework, so it means you have very fast load times. And then you can use free drag and drop builders, that's just Elementor or Beaver Builder in WordPress, that help you kind of design your pages very quickly and very easily without a lot of coding.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Justin. I think that's really useful information. Tamara asked if there's any safe way to create an email funnel without collecting it on the site or any outside vendors.
So to build an email funnel, oftentimes you need something called an ESP or an email service provider. The ConvertKit that I mentioned is one such thing. Is also Constant Contact as one of another one out there. MailChimp is another popular one. So when you're collecting those emails are stored on those companies' servers. So you have a little bit more protection that way. So you don't have those on your website as well. So if your site does get compromised, those emails are more than likely protected. And because it's on, it's kind of separating them, because you have your website and they're going here, but all that information is being stored on the third party of the Constant Contact, ConvertKit, MailChimp, etc.
Thanks, Justin. Let's see, another question on here was, can the participant video be eliminated for better? Oh, no, okay, that's not a question exactly about this. Okay, so what are the top 3 indicators or most common ways you find out your website has been hacked?
It's actually quite simple, honestly, because if somebody hacks your website, you'll notice. I'll give you an example. One of the projects I'm working on in my free time is helping rebuild a site that was hacked, because it was a museum website, and all the information was gone, and it was a shop page for some medications that I won't go into too much detail on, but so all the information was not displayed. So it's pretty simple. Once your site is hacked, that's happened. Also, like I said, if you use those plugins that I recommend, like the WordFence security plugin, you can set it up so you get notifications if your site is being attempted to be hacked or somebody's trying to log into your website. So it's easy to see that. And then why I like the WordFence plugin is because you can go in, because I've had this happen where I've had a brute force attack. I mean, a brute force attack is where they use a computer algorithm to constantly just send files and login information to try to break it and try to push one through. And it blocks all that without getting notified of it. And so I can go block their IP address. They can't do that anymore. So I can block the whole network if I needed to. So if I'm getting attacked from a certain network, I can go block that entire network, and so they can't access my site anymore. And so I guess other things to look for, I mean, if it's smaller things besides, like I said, the obvious changes, or just notice if you have any new files, any new pages up, anything's changed that you didn't change before.
Awesome, thanks, Justin. Any other questions? I think we addressed most questions in the chat. If anybody's struggling with anything in particular about their site, feel free to ask. If not, we're pretty much at, oh, here's one. Should I refresh retail website weekly? And which is better for sole proprietor, next step, LLC?
So the first part of that I can answer. I might need some clarification on what do you mean by what is better for sole proprietor. So as far as refreshing a website weekly, that's a lot of demand. So you basically you be doing that almost full time to do that. If you're running your own business as a sole proprietor, you have other stuff to worry about. There are certain tools out there you can do. And so there's something out there called dynamic content, which a lot of these things have. So what you can do is, so say if I add a new, so again, let me give you an example. WooCommerce has a dynamic content feature. Dynamic content means as I add something, it will post that new post in this new spot or region or website without me having to manually put it there. So example of this would be blog post. So if I have a blog post module, it pulls from this feed and it shows up on my homepage where it has my most recent post. But right after that, say if I write a new post, I don't have to go manually put that in there and on that new page or on every other page that I had that blog post on. It automatically finds my new post and plugs it in there. And the products and WooCommerce, they have the same thing. So if you make a new product, it automatically puts it right there, depending on the settings you have. So you can have best sellers, you can have new items, things that are coupon, discounted, things like that. And so you can constantly put it on there. So I think that is the best way to do it. As far as like refreshing your website, like redoing your website, honestly, maybe once a year, like redoing the whole design as I wouldn't redo a whole website like more than once a year. If you find something's not working and say you're not getting a lot of traffic, you can have bounce rates, then go ahead and refresh the site and try something else to see if that works better. But as far as once a week, that's a lot of work to do.
Awesome, thanks, Justin. We've pretty much hit time on the webinar today, so everyone can feel free to hop off. I'm going to stay back. Justin's welcome to stay back as well, Pete also, because a couple people have some additional questions, but just want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if you need to hop off, it's okay to do that.
So, like I said, I'll be happy to stay on and answer questions. To answer the second part of the question, before I see it says the sole proprietor LLC aspect. The main thing to protect yourself on this, and you might see this on most websites, they have a terms of service or a privacy policy page that you can usually find in the footer of a website. This lawyer can help you draft this, but this helps you kind of basically says like, in essence, it kind of goes, by using my site, basically I remove myself from all liability because you are using my site voluntarily. And so any information you give me is all voluntary, and anything you sell. And so you might also have a return, refund or return policy if you're selling something. And you need to make sure you have all those legal pages on your site. And like I said, and they don't have to be featured prominently. Like I said, most websites have them in the footer at the bottom.
Thanks, Justin. I see, does aggressive social media cause more hackers?
And I'll be talking about social media a lot the next presentation. So there's yes and no to that. As with anything, with more traffic, you have more potential of bad traffic, people trying to hack into your site. However, it's not necessarily going to be have more hackers on there, because you're more likely going to get the good good type of traffic with social media, because if I was a hacker, I'm not gonna browse on social media to go hack into a site. You know, there are more efficient ways for hackers to try to go to sites.
Thanks, Justin. And then Tamara Temple has a question. Tamara, go.
Thanks, Justin, thanks. This was great. The question, I'm starting to design some online courses. And so yesterday, the day before, maybe I was looking at something called Thinkific. So I've got so much to do, I get overwhelmed. I thought it's easier to ask you. They're asking like to, you know, give each course like its own page, and then the whole thing its own website page. And I'm confused. Should I keep that consistent with my business page, or
what's the service you're using again?
Let me see.
Thinkific.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not too familiar with them. So what they're probably trying to say is, okay, so as far as your pages go, you can have as many pages as you want on your website. To help order things, so in terms of building out the technical aspect, each page is like a file. Okay, so to help keep your courses, the different lessons organized, you want a different file. And there's different platforms out there to help you organize this stuff. But we're just talking about like the course page. So you probably want like a course overview page. So if you're having multiple courses.
Right, but this is all on their thing, and then I've got my own website. So I mean, I'll integrate.
Gotcha. Yes. So what they're doing then is it doesn't hurt your traffic. It doesn't hurt your website. It's good. Yes, you definitely need to integrate it, but they're hosting that stuff for you to help make it more secure. So what that does is, what you can do on your website to drive traffic to your courses is have a page on your website describing all the courses you have. That's one of those landing pages I talked about. And then you can have another page where people can find out more information about that specific course. So, for example, say, I'll go back to the beauty product for a second. Say if you had a course on how to do eye makeup. Okay, so that could be one page where you can go into all the different things they're going to learn, like a quick overview of all the lessons. But then they have another course on lipstick, and then all the different types of lipstick out there. That's another page. But then you'd have one page that's above that, where you have, these are all the courses I offer on beauty products. This is where then you can see I have one on eye makeup, one lipstick, and et cetera, et cetera. And so they have it's like a hub for all the courses you have, and then another page for each course you have that drives them specifically to that course on Thinkific.
So, but as far as theming is what I mean, because you said you're a graphics designer, I'm not visual at all.
So
I want do I want it to look similar, or can I just be totally creative over there with the courses?
So I'm not familiar with their platform, so I don't know how much customization options you have over there.
Totally,
on Thinkific.
Like new web pages.
Then yes, you want to keep it the same, because this kind of goes back into the presentation we had last time of developing your online brand.
Okay.
Because all that aspect goes into brand. And so you want to make sure your brand is consistent no matter what platform you're on, so people know it's you.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Tamara. And then Gwen has a question about cookies. So she wants to know why you see cookies warnings and have to accept it on many sites that you go to.
So the cookie warning is a new policy that was developed by the European Union not too long ago. And I'm sure a lot of you might remember all the Facebook Zuckerberg scandal when he went develop, in front of Congress and all this stuff. But the European Union passed a law says you have to give people an option to opt out of non-essential cookies because the cookies collect your information, your data. And so it's all about the privacy we talked about and the security aspects. So you have to now, most websites, because it's a worldwide thing, anybody from your website, anybody all over the world can access your website. You kind of have that policy on there so people can have, basically they accept the uses of cookies. And now what a cookie is, it's a small file, usually like a pixel, that can help track some data. Now, these aren't necessarily bad. Like say the Google Analytics, like I mentioned, that has a cookie because it puts a cookie, and it lets them download this cookie on the user site automatically. So you can track the data. So you just gather information about your customer bases, and then but other people can sell that information to outside parties. So that's when you get those spam emails or those ads on your Facebook page that show, how many times do we think it's like, I was just thinking about something, and it shows up on your Facebook page, trying to sell it. And it's all about the algorithms and the Facebook cookies and all that stuff. So that's where you have to give people an option to opt out, or basically saying, by using my site, you accept to all the cookies that I have.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin, for answering that. Regina had a question about whether or not it looks bad if you don't have social media, because she can't, she doesn't have the capacity right now to manage a whole social media page.
So it doesn't. This is again, it's a two-edged sword. Nowadays they all kind of go hand in hand. I would say it doesn't help you. I don't think it might hurt you a little bit. So it doesn't look bad, kind of, just to have no presence. What I would recommend is if you don't have the social media icons on your page, that's fine. If you don't want to drive traffic to your social media because you don't have time for it, that's okay. What I would suggest is if you can pick one that you do by yourself, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Just create one account, even if you're not very active on it right now. Just have one, just so you have some type of social proof, just to make sure like you are who you say you are. Because a lot of times people, when they want to buy something from your site, they go to social media to help validate, to make sure other people have bought from you, to see what they say about your company. Whether this is Facebook or even like other platforms like Yelp and things like that. So I would recommend having just a small, even if you don't have time to develop your presence on social media, go ahead and create the account and like post one or two things, just so people know that you're real.
Thanks, Justin, for answering that question. Regina asked which one would be best for selling, Facebook or Instagram. And by the way, Regina, I highly recommend that you go to the next, that you attend the next webinar, because Justin's going to be delving deep into social media, different demographics, how to use it. So that might be really helpful to get in-depth insights on that. Justin, if you have...
Quick, one thing I will say is a lot of people don't realize Instagram is actually owned by Facebook. So if it depends, I think it depends on who your demographic is, but oftentimes if you create one on Facebook and you can create an Instagram right away, you can actually link your accounts. So if you post on Instagram, post on your Facebook and vice versa. So I would recommend doing that.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. And then Brian just sent a comment. He said that Facebook just announced their intention to get into e-commerce. So.
They've been doing that. Yes, actually, you can actually start, but to do that, actually, you can actually start selling some of your products on Facebook and as well on Instagram. But that links back, it has to link back to your physical store or to your store on a website. So that's where you need to have your website going and your e-commerce setup on that, because it does link back. You need to enter in your website information so it can link back to that. I think they might be developing more. I don't know when that's going to happen though.
Thanks, Justin. That's really good insight. And just a note too, cyberspace changes super quickly, and so it's important to keep up with the trends and things that are changing about it. So everything Justin said today is really great information, and good to follow up with. But I just encourage everybody to continue to read articles, see what like this new Facebook e-commerce thing that's brand new. It's good that you're sticking up, or staying, keeping up with those articles and that news, because it really does affect the space that you're planning to integrate into. So thank you so much, Justin. So that's going to conclude our webinar today. If you guys have any other questions, there's going to be an email that's sent out to everybody that registered today that has, you know, our email addresses if you have any questions, some helpful links. And if you want to register for the next webinar session on social media, please visit our digital marketing webinar series landing page, where you can watch today's recording, last week's recording, and the week before, and get other great resources available to you. So thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Thank you so much, Justin. That's a really great presentation, awesome insights. So thanks. We'll hopefully see some of you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good job, Justin.
Thanks.